I'm taking another turn. Okay, it doesn't work like that. You have to be chosen.
An engagement, a betrayal, and a musical number? Yeah, just another typical day in Rosewood, so let's break down the latest episode of Pretty Little Liars. What's up, you lovely people, and welcome back. So tonight in Rosewood, we saw the return of Mary Drake, the Hastings family start to kind of blow up, and as suspected, Mona's up to more than she's letting the others know about. So let's get started. First, there's no Allie in this episode. She's actually gone off to New York to visit Jason. What is she visiting him for? So next up, I'm gonna go with Hanna and Caleb. Detective Fury is hot on their trail and shows up at their place because, well, Detective Fury is pretty smart and knows that the basement storage flood was not an accident. Turns out a witness has spotted Hanna and Caleb at the Radley that night, but Caleb is pretty quick to come up with an excuse saying, well, I lived there and Hanna came to see me. We had nothing to do with this flood. Then Hanna kind of offers a little too much information, saying, yeah, Caleb actually lives there and he helped update the hotel security system. And then Fury's like, oh, that's so convenient because that night the system happened to fail. Fury then tells the two that while one piece of evidence may have been destroyed in that storage room, he has a lot of other compelling evidence that surfaced, and let's just say this kind of sends Hanna down one of her spirals and she's panicking. Hanna's mom is back in town, and of course the police are all over her and the Radley about this whole incident, and she questions Caleb, wanting to know if he had anything to do with the flood, if he's trying to protect Hanna, and Caleb's like, no. Like I said, Hanna is now in panic mode. She knows that her mom is going to find out that she's lying because her mom always knows when she's lying, and Caleb is trying to calm her down and be like, hey, we covered our tracks. But Hanna really wants to cover everything, like cover all those tracks, so she goes off to the park to try to find the shovels they used to bury Archer. And I'm just sitting here like, why would you have left those shovels behind in the first place? Isn't like one of the rules of killing a person to not leave the tools that you use lying around? Not that I've ever killed a person, and I don't know if that's actually one of the rules, but it just seems like common sense, right? Well, the park ranger ends up telling Hanna that the shovels were actually all confiscated, and he's like, they could have been used in a crime or something, and it's like, uh-oh. Hanna returns home to tell Caleb that she is freaking out, the shovels are gone, and she has spent the last 4 hours getting Lucas's car completely detailed so there could be no trace of evidence of anything in that car. And that's when Hanna's mom walks out and is like, oh, why did you have the car detailed? So Hanna has to lie through her teeth once again. Now Hanna's mom questions Caleb's motives once again and just wants to know why he is back in Hanna's life, and Caleb then goes on to give kind of a lovey-dovey sweet speech about how he loves Hanna and, not being with her would have been a mistake. They almost ended up with other people, and he actually wants to marry Hanna and just marry her. No bells and whistles, don't need a huge wedding, just the two of them and their vows, and it's actually pretty sweet. The two then end up in a tent in the middle of the woods since Caleb's trying to lay low from the Radley, but is there no other hotel in town? Anyway, Hanna ends up asking if Caleb meant what he said, and Caleb's like, if we could find a bear out here who was licensed, I'd marry you right this second. Which made me laugh, but is also pretty sweet. And then the two exchange the bands off of 2 cigars. I mean, it's kind of a way to save money on rings, right? Now, while these two are pretty happy, it seems like Ezra and Aria are still having some awkward wedding issues because Ezra is actually the one who is worried about everything planning this wedding, and whether his brother's going to mess up his best man speech, who's going to sit where, all of this, and Aria's just kind of obviously spaced out in her AD land. Well, Ezra thinks that Aria may be getting cold feet, and he finally has a talk with her. He's like, if you've been having reservations, I want to kind of like remedy that. He knows that he's done things in the past that can't be forgiven, and that, the trust levels might be pretty low after what he did to, get that book, after kind of torturing all the girls, everything like that. And he says that he can't change history, but he loves Aria so much, and he believes that they're actually stronger for everything that they've gone through. Now, I'm going to admit that the whole Aria Ezra thing for me has been kind of annoying lately, but I probably would have married Ezra right then after this whole little speech. So Aria, if you don't end up putting a ring on that man, watch your back. He's going to get swooped up pretty fast. Or I bet you Nicole's waiting in the wings, ready to pounce. Also, does anyone else think that Ian Harding should be on Dancing with the Stars? Because seeing him and Lucy dance in that opening scene, yeah, I'd be all for that. Moving on, Mona is now officially in on the action after being, pretty sad she was left out in the last episode. And most of the girls, well, basically everyone but Hanna, is not so happy about it. No one really trusts Mona. I'm gonna admit, you can't really trust her, but she has quite the useful skill set. And when Spencer questions Mona's motives about why she wants to help and all this, Mona actually brings up a really good point. She's basically like, I was an accessory to the crime with the whole Archer Dunhill thing, and yeah, she's not leaving her fate in the girl's hands, and yeah, I wouldn't leave it there either, Mona. Now, Mona has proven herself useful and reveals to Emily that she's found out the name of the fertility doctor who did Allie's procedure. So they have an appointment the next day where they have to go pretend like they're a couple in order to get information out of this guy. And they want to know either who paid for the surgery or who Allie's baby daddy is. When Mona and Emily are at Dr. Hamlin's office trying to convince him they're a couple, he asks, which one of them is going to get pregnant, and they kind of, aren't on the same page. So they tell him to kind of decide, so he starts asking questions, and he asks if either of them have been pregnant before. Now, Mona has no hesitation and says no, but Emily's kind of staring off into space. I don't know if she just didn't hear the question, or maybe she's hesitating for another reason. But there's a pause, and then she finally goes, oh, yeah, no. So it makes me wonder if there's a secret there for Emily that we don't know about. I mean, I Googled it because I was just that curious, and I wasn't sure if I was reading too much into it. I don't think there's ever been anything mentioned on the show about Emily giving up a baby or anything like that. But apparently in the books, that did happen. So is it going to show up in the show at some point? Or is it just kind of too far out there and we don't have that many episodes left? Why reveal something like that? What does this have to do with the plotline, I guess? Anyway, the doctor then asks who recommended them to him, and they say Allison Rollins, or you might know her as Allison De Laurentiis, and the doctor's demeanor immediately changes. He's like, I don't think you're here for the right reasons.
I'm here for the right reasons, so.
And then tells them to find another doctor. Now, as they're leaving, Mona actually grabs a magazine off the table, which has the home address on the label of Dr. Hamlin. So they decide to go snooping around. And I think it's kind of weird that the magazine had his home address, because if these magazines are stored and displayed at the office, wouldn't they just get sent to the office? Isn't that easier? Either way, the two return the next day, and they discover that Dr. Hamlin has recently paid off a whole medical school bill overnight, which, of course, is pretty shady. So they demand to know who the donor is, and he says he can't do that, but after a few more threats, he says everything was done electronically. He doesn't know who was contacting him, but all he has is the donor ID number. Now let's catch up with Aria, who's still doing stuff for AD, but it's kind of driving her to her wit's end. Like, she's about to crack. We already know she's pretty bad at pretending like she's not up to something. Well, AD wants Aria to go after Spencer's family this time, and Aria at first refuses because she's like, Spencer and the Hastings have been through so much, I don't want to hurt them, I don't want to hurt my friends. But AD gets her to comply by reading some of the stuff from her file, which turns out to be the report that she never made about Ezra to the police station, which basically says that Ezra was a predator and all this kind of bad stuff. And Aria's like, I wrote that 6 years ago, never filed it. Yeah, doesn't matter. It still exists. AD is like, you deliver this gift to Spencer or you'll be getting married in jail. When all the girls are gathered around the game, Hannah's kind of flipping out and even offers to take another turn. And the girls are kind of like, that's not how this game works. It chooses you. And then Hannah actually brings up, once again, why hasn't Aria had a turn? So what does Aria have to deliver to Spencer? Well, it's a phone with a recording on it, so Aria goes over, pretends to be bringing Spencer food, ends up dropping the phone in a box because Spencer's family is packing up to move to Harrisburg, and then Aria books it out of there. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about what's actually on that phone and the recording in Spencer's section, but right now I'm just focusing on Aria. Aria then gets a text from AD saying, nice job, you've shown your true colors, and then we kind of get a pretty awkward scene in a sense. You know how AD threatened Aria and was like, hey, you'll be getting married in jail? Well, it seems like that's kind of getting to Aria, plus she's been watching this black and white movie on TV. And yeah, all that has translated to her dreams. We end up getting a black and white scene in which Ezra is in jail in a jumpsuit, handcuffs, Aria's there to marry him, and Mona's the warden who's just dancing around singing Jailhouse Rock as Ezra gets beat up.
Number 47 said to number 3, you're the cutest helper that I ever did see. Be delighted with your company. Come on and do the Jailhouse Rock with me, that's right.
And at the end, Mrs. Hastings is there to officiate their wedding, but she has some choice words for Aria.
I am so sorry. Please forgive me.
Forgive you? Oh, honey. You're just a selfish little bitch. I wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire.
Oh, that guilt, it'll get to you, Aria. I mean, good thing it was a dream, right? Looks like, yeah, like I said, being on the dark side is really starting to wear Aria down. How much longer is she actually going to last? Well, she then gets a text from AD saying, hey, your reward is downstairs in the brew. So she goes searching everywhere in the brew, ends up finding an envelope which has a puzzle piece in it that says, connect this, you're almost there. And as she looks up, she makes eye contact across the room with who? Mona. And yeah, both just look completely suspicious. Aria then dons her hoodie and sneaks into Allison's to put her puzzle piece on the board when the phone buzzes telling her that her reward is behind her, and she ends up finding a couple pages from the file in a vase. Now here's the thing. Aren't the girls going to be super suspicious when they see that a new puzzle piece has been added to the board when really no one's taken a turn? Like, Aria's already a really bad liar, so how is she going to talk her way out of this one? Now let's talk about Spencer. Her family's prepping to move to Harrisburg, like I said. Aria hides the phone. The audio file that goes off is actually a recording of Mr. Hastings talking to Mary Drake and them arguing over Jessica's dead body and all of that drama that we've kind of heard a little bit before. Now, Mr. Hastings is heard being like, you thought you could pin this on me, and Mary's like, oh, I had no choice because of what you and Jessica were planning, and it just keeps repeating, and of course, Mr. Hastings hears this, freaks out, rushes into the room, thinks it's Mary that's broken into the house and left the phone, and so he's trying to figure out where this is all coming from. Spencer ends up finding the phone in a box, and who does she call to talk about this to? Yeah, Aria. Really, of all the girls, that's who you choose to talk to? Well, she tells Aria what she's found out and how the phone has basically blown up her entire family, and she thinks that her dad may have more to do with Jessica's death than they thought. And then she tells Aria that they actually think Mary Drake dropped the phone there, which is, of course, good news for Aria. However, Spencer says that she's actually not fully convinced because that letter that Mary Drake wrote her has really resonated with her. Now, Spencer's getting ready to head off somewhere, and when she's outside, Detective Fury gets out of his car, and more questioning is done, and he reveals that he knows that Spencer and Caleb were more than just friends at one time, so Caleb has motive to save Spencer, and so basically just telling them that he still thinks Caleb was responsible for the basement flood. And he also kind of wants to know if Spencer hooked up with him just to have a detective in their corner. Spencer ends up giving him some more sass, and he leaves, but when she gets in her car, who pops up? Mary Drake. They end up going to the Lost Woods Resort, where Mary says that she didn't leave the phone, but she did overhear everything because she was waiting for Spencer to come outside. Mary thinks that the hospital is the one who recorded the call, and then tells Spencer not to judge her because she'd be surprised of all the things that you would do to protect yourself sometimes. And then we get a flashback that goes with that little thought of Mary at the house with Mr. Hastings, and he's telling her this is the last time she's Spencer, and that, you know, this is the last time you'll be in the house. And then in walks Jessica, who's like, oh, I thought we were going to take care of this. Well, yeah, it turns out that what we've learned here is that the pills that stopped Jessica's heart were actually meant for Mary. Mr. Hastings is the one who got them for Jessica, but Mary ended up intercepting them and using them on Jessica. And then Mary actually asks Spencer to stay with her. Spencer returns home to see that her parents have found that letter that Mary wrote to her. And Mr. Hastings is not happy about it, saying, you know, Mary is very manipulative and he's just trying to protect his family from a sociopath, and he would have done all of that stuff again. Then he kind of brings up, you know, he's like, hey, if someone was continually threatening you, do you think you'd do anything different? And he's like, I wouldn't have done anything different. And of course he's right, because think of all the shit that Spencer and all the other girls have done while being constantly tormented by A and AD. You end up getting to a breaking point, right? Mrs. Hastings then tells Spencer that, you know, she's going to forfeit her Senate seat. They're not going to move because basically she's married to someone who has a lot of secrets, and she can't just keep watching her back waiting for those secrets to come out. And she ends up handing Spencer back her letter. Spencer then goes to the Lost Woods to tell Mary that she's not going with her, and then Mary asks Spencer if she knows who delivered that recording yet, but Spencer's like, no, but I know it wasn't you. And then Spencer kind of tells Mary to forgive herself for everything. The episode ends with Mona, who returns home to find Emily outside her door. Now, Emily has the burner phone that Aria left at Spencer's, and they want Mona to see if she can figure out who sent it, all that kind of stuff. And Mona's kind of being weird and is just like, why can't you ask Caleb? But, you know, Caleb wasn't answering his phone. So Mona takes the phone and kind of brushes Emily off and rushes inside. So what is Mona hiding? Well, it turns out that Mona has a huge-ass wall, maybe, I don't know what you call it, an evidence wall, a crime wall, whatever it is, that is full of newspaper clippings, the pictures of the game, pictures, Allie's mugshot, pictures of Jason, Charlotte, like I said, newspaper clippings, all kinds of weird things that are related to everything that's been happening basically throughout the show. And as the camera is panning, we end up seeing all those shovels in the corner. Yeah, those shovels that Hanna was looking for. All right, Ramona, what are you up to, you sneaky, sneaky woman? Are you playing both sides again? Or are you conducting your own investigation that might ultimately help everyone? Are you working with the police? Or are you just back on the dark side? Like, honestly, what are you up to this time? I guess the girls kind of are right to not trust you, right? Well, to sum up this episode, Aria finally has the pieces of the file that she's wanted, that AD's been holding over her head, although she wasn't given the entire file, just a few pages, so is her work with AD really over? Detective Fury's nipping at everyone's feet about this case, Hanna and Caleb seem to be engaged, and Mona's still shady as fuck. Now, let's take a look at next week's episode.
Tuesday, hookups, breakups,
We literally caught you black hoodie.
We're done, and I'm out.
and a liar's wedding. Everyone is making their final move.
I've done everything you asked me to do, and you've given me nothing. Damn it!
All right, so looks like a wedding is coming to Rosewood. I'm guessing, at first guess, has to be Hanna and Caleb, right? They got engaged in this episode. He said he didn't want bells and whistles, just to get married. Definitely can't be Aria and Ezra, especially because they don't seem to be in the right mindset to be married at this moment, especially since the promo shows Aria kind of being all stressed out, possibly getting caught by all the other liars. But actually looking closer at the hands, it looks like it's two sets of female hands. So is it an Emerson wedding? That might be where I'm leaning towards. Also, it looks like Spoby's gonna reconnect, and just tons of drama in this next episode. I mean, that's episode 18. We only have like, what, 2 more episodes after that? So everything has to kind of start unraveling soon. We have to start getting all of our answers. Alright, so what did you think of this episode? I feel like we didn't get a ton of new answers, and I'm guessing that Jailhouse Rock scene was that big musical number they've been teasing for a while. And I'm gonna be honest, it wasn't really what I was expecting, but Janelle sounded great. Now hit me up in the comments or on social media, as always, with your continued AD theories. Let me know what you think Mona is up to, how you think the girls are gonna react to Aria's puzzle piece, who you think's getting married, all that good stuff, and let's just hope that those answers start rolling in soon. Then you can click right over here to see my recap of the Shadowhunters 2B premiere or the latest teaser for Season 5 of The Fosters. And if you like what you see, how about hitting that little subscribe button right here? Pretty please. And as always, I'm Lisa. Thanks for hanging out with me on What Happened.